Hi guys, my name is Gil and I spend roughly about 6 months a year traveling with my camera. I'm doing this for more than 10 years and I've gained quite a lot of experience in it, so I would like to share this experience with you today. So today's video is less about photography but more on how to prepare for such photo trip. And by the end of this video you will be ready for your trip. So the first part of every such journey is research. For me, usually everything starts with a single photo. I see a photo that I like and I say to myself, that's interesting. I should learn more about this. So the first phase is to do a very broad research. I look at things like the location itself. I check how to get there. After figuring that part out, I try to find what else is there. If there are any interesting events or celebration happening at the place. If I'm already going somewhere, I want to know as more as possible about that place. I use Google Maps to get a physical sense of the area. I use Instagram location tags to see what other photographers have captured there recently. I'm not looking to copy, just to get a rough idea of what is there. And of course, I chat with Gemini or Claude to get more information about the area I'm about to photograph. I retest them, I ask them to go through forums, through Reddit posts, to Quora questions, and make a list of top places to visit and top places with photographic interest. The event checking part matters more than people give credit to it. A destination can be completely different depending on the calendar, a religious holiday, or even a weekly market that only happens on Thursday. They all can have a major impact on how the scene will look like. Places like Varanasi have entire season built around specific festivals. So festivals and occasions are very important and it's important to research them. So before you lock your dates, check what's actually happening there. Because maybe with just a small change, you will be able to participate in something that you didn't expect it in the first place. After all that information, I'm ready for a deeper research. The first thing that I try to figure out is what the photography related locations are. I do like to randomly explore and get lost while exploring as well, but I prefer to have at least few set destinations. Knowing this location will help me with the basic choice of where to stay. I always try to find accommodation as close as possible to the shooting area. Being even 30 minutes away is a deal breaker for me. That completely disturbs the photography logistics. I'm also a foodie, so I will look at what places there are to eat around the areas I'm photographing. It's very often that I have a shooting plan following by a meal plan or a small snack in the middle. And the last one is how much time I would like to allocate to that area. And to that, I would usually add a day or two, because you never know, you might want to have an extra day to rediscover or to come back to the same place. All this gets pinned into Google Maps. Google Maps now has the ability to create different lists and attach icons to them, which is very convenient. Look how I did mine. For example, a camera icon would be a shooting location, a burger, a food joint, an ATM sign, an ATM, and vice versa. That simplifies the map a lot. One look at it and you know where you photograph, where you eat, and where your hotel is. You can see how my map looks like for Hanoi, for example. For every location, by the end of that research, I will have a clear idea about the following: the safety recommendations, the shooting locations, how to get to these shooting locations, and where to have a good coffee and a good meal. Then I look closer at the arrival logistics. When you arrive in a new location, you need to have the following covered. The first one is your internet connectivity. This is always my first priority. I get an eSIM sorted before I even land, or I know exactly where to get myself a local SIM card at the moment I'm in the airport. Don't leave the connectivity for later. If anything goes wrong, internet is your best way to solve problems. You will need maps, translation, and ride-sharing apps working the second you land. The airport terminal might have Wi-Fi, but I'd rather rely on myself with that one. For the rare occasion that you cannot get internet at all, which also happens, I would have the maps.me app installed on my phone with the local offline map downloaded. I'll pin there the airport and my hotel. Somewhere in my phone, I will have a note with the details of how exactly I'm getting to my hotel. That note will include the hotel contact numbers and the address. That note should be somewhere that can be accessed offline. Next one is money. I would always have 2 to 300 US dollars in cash for emergencies, about 100 of which in small notes. That makes sure you're always able to take a taxi and pay for your hotel even if there is no working ATM around. But usually I'll try to get some cash from the airport ATM. If for some reason it's not possible, I would exchange something like 50 USD to local currency so I can at least take a taxi. I know that we live in a world of ride-sharing apps and technology, but trust me on that one, there are still places where you might need to have some backup. So do your research. After having this set, I make a shooting plan. Usually on the first day, I do so-called scouting. This is also the day that I just arrived. I might be jet-lagged and not 100% myself. So I like taking this day slow. I try to visit all the areas I've planned to get a better idea of what it looks like. I might spend the whole day outside familiarizing myself with the place, but most importantly is taking it slow. And when I say scouting, it's not just walking around looking at things. I'm checking specific stuff. Where does the light come from at the different times of a day? And which alleys or streets stay in the shadow versus which one gets good light? I always check my watch and try to calculate where the light will be in the morning or in the afternoon, depends on the time I'm there. I also check where the natural entry and exit points of a location or a market area, so I know how the flow of people actually moves. As more I register on my scouting days, the easier it will be for me on the following shooting days. I also try to speak with the locals and ask some specific questions. What is happening here in the morning? How people move around? When do they arrive? When the area gets filled? A lot of questions. As more questions you ask, the more you will know about the place. And you might get some local context that will help you with whatever you need. Doing all that, I will know more about the visuals of the place, more about the type of activities happening there, and check how the light is behaving there. After doing all that, I will prioritize some of the places and might decide to cross off and just skip some of the others. Some places look wonderful online, but when you arrive there, you find that it's not as interesting as you thought. When the shooting days start, I try to pace myself. You can, of course, photograph from morning to evening, but it is much better to pace yourself. I would usually do 1 to 2 sessions a day, a morning session and an afternoon one. If I have to give up one, it will usually be the evening one. The reason I prioritize the morning ones is simply that they are purer in terms of human interaction. It is a new day for everyone. When you come in the afternoon, you're meeting the people after they already had their whole day before that. You don't know what they experienced during that day. Negative interactions would usually happen in the second half of the day. Another reason to have the second part of the day off is simply to rest and process the morning experience. Processing, resting, and reflecting prepares you better for the next day. When you photograph 6 months a year, you can do 2 daily sessions all the time. Otherwise, you will burn. You need to be gentle with yourself. Doing things slower also allows you to connect deeper with the location. I'm interested to hear how do you pace yourself or how do you plan or do the research for your trip. So please let me know in the comments. Sometimes going to a completely new location or when there are too many things to check, I might consider working with a fixer. Since my type of photography is candid, I don't really need them to fix anything for me. So I do it only on a very rare occasions. One of the bigger problems with fixers is that there are rarely any good ones. The gap between whatever I think is interesting for photography and whatever they think it's interesting is huge. These are usually guys that just learn that if they put the word fixer in their social media or their services description, it will bring them more business. And it does. They're usually just local tour guides with little to no understanding of photography. The worst is if they already had a client who was into photography, then they will project everything they learned with him onto you. They will try to take you to the same places and capture the same photographs. No thanks for that. Of course, sometimes you can get lucky, but most of the time a fixer can just waste your time. Therefore, to have a success with one, always communicate your needs as clearly as possible. And when you hear okay, ask more questions. Try to verify that you are understood. Don't just say, I want to photograph local life. That means nothing to them. Say exactly what you're after, and if they suggest a location, ask them what specifically happens there and when. If they can't answer all these questions with any real details, that tells you a lot about how they actually know the place. So, where do you find these fixers? The first one would be to Google the location plus the word photography plus the word fixer. But that again doesn't guarantee that he is a fixer at all. You can try searching through your Instagram or speak with your AI bot and Facebook as well. If you don't find any, just search for regular guides. But again, it's very important to communicate clearly what are you after. Another angle is to find a fixer through experiences. A lot of travel booking websites now offer experiences, so you can search and see if there are any photography related experiences at your location. My personal favorite ones are the walks, where someone takes you on a half-day walk through the city. So instead of hiring a fixer, I will occasionally join a walk like that. It shows me the highlights of the city and helps me to pin some more places to my map. The big benefit is that they're usually very affordable, and the ones rated higher usually have a decent people running them. They'll speak good English and will be able to answer all your local questions. And you can also use their help to find someone to help you around. So it's kind of a backdoor into finding a local fixer. The other one is to find local photographers that live in that area and try to talk to them via their social media accounts. Some might be happy to help you, some might be not. You never know if you don't try. I'm curious to know what's your process of getting into an unknown environment like that. Now, the favorite topic of many is gear. The discussion of what kind of gear to take is a very subjective one. You can go on and on about that subject endlessly, and everyone you ask will have their own opinion on it. I have a great video on the channel that unpacks a minimalistic approach. What is it like to travel with one camera and one lens for 2 years? That might bring some perspective on the topic. I'll list it below in the video description. My general advice is not to take too much. Taking a lot of gear means you will be worried about leaving it in the hotel, and it will be a hassle to drag it around with you on the street. I used to have a full kit and travel with over 10K worth of gear. Like everybody else, I wanted to be ready for everything, to have all the possible tools for everything that comes my way. It took me time to realize that being light, nimble, and carrying only a few pieces of glass was the better way. That 2-year one lens experience actually taught me something I still carry with me today. Lack of gear is liberating. When you're not managing 5 lens choices, you're just working with what you have, and you get more creative because of it. And even today, when I have a full kit available to me, I will still try to limit myself to one lens per session. For this year, I will be taking my Nikon ZF with 35mm f1.8 lens and my Ricoh GR with 28mm equivalent lens. I still haven't decided if the 50mm f1.8 is coming with me, but I have strong feeling that it will remain behind. Since I'm traveling for a long period of time, I do take my laptop, and I do take several SSD drives, ideally 2 for the photographs and 1 for Time Machine to back up my Mac on it. And I take my photographs out on a daily basis. Ideally, I also delete the bad ones and rate them, but that doesn't always happen. Make sure to take several SD cards and extra batteries. And I use dual or triple chargers to charge the batteries. It's simply faster than charging them one by one. And I choose the one that are holding the batteries securely, so you can even charge from your power bank in your bag. Now about power bank. If you ever plan to go to China, make sure that your power bank is CCC certified. It should have 3 times C typed on the back of it. Otherwise, you will just have to leave it somewhere in China on a check-in to an airport. I will be adding links to all of the gear in the video description so you can find them easily. And understand, all these are my personal choices based on my previous experiences and the type of photography I do. They might work well for many, but maybe not for you and for your work, so adjust to your needs. Now, with all that gear, we still need to find a way to keep it all safe. I have a full dedicated video on gear and safety, and I really think of it's one worth watching for anyone who travels with camera gear. But here are the basics to get you started. The core idea behind all of it is try as much as possible to make sure nothing about your appearance says as you're carrying anything valuable. The goal is not to build a fortress around your gear, it's to avoid being picked as target in the first place. The fewer people who know what you're carrying, the less likely are you to become one. And these are few of the basics. Leave the jewelry and branded clothes at home. Watches, gold chains, anything flashy and logo-heavy jackets or sneakers, anything that says I have money, just leave it home. No branded camera straps. Tape over logos with something plain, like black tape will work fine. Don't leave your hotel with 2 cameras and a big backpack full of gear on display. That tells everyone around, hotel staff and strangers alike, exactly what you're carrying. Use a plain backpack with a camera insert instead of a recognizable branded camera bag. These are easy for a thief to identify from across the street. Never leave your bag on the floor or on a table while you're shooting or eating. It takes about 15 seconds for it to disappear. I have a rock climbing carabiner. I would use it to attach it to anything. That will prevent this snap and grab type of theft. In the hotel, keep your gear locked away in a larger suitcase. It is always harder to steal a larger suitcase than a small backpack. There is a second reason to think about what you wear, and it's got nothing to do with theft. Since I'm mostly into street photography, I try to merge into the scene as much as possible. And a bright pink or bright yellow jacket that are wonderful for hiking are pretty much the opposite if you want to do street photography. You're not trying to be seen, you're trying to disappear into the flow of the place. So I stick to muted, plain colors, nothing that makes people read you. That's the short version of it. The full gear video safety video gets a lot deeper into the accommodation choices and moving between cities and the mindset side of it. I'll link it below as well. In terms of luggage, I use the Osprey wheeled luggage systems. They're better than suitcases simply because of the wheels, which let you get through a slightly rougher surface. They also break eventually, but I usually manage to get 3 years out of a bag. In terms of camera bag, I either travel with my old Peak Design 20 liters, which stays in the hotel locked in the bigger bag, or a normal backpack with camera inserts. Outside, I'm always lightweight, usually with a small day pack with a soft insert. I think this is it. This is how I get ready for trips and how I survive 6 months of traveling every year. I'm happy to answer your questions because I can answer most of your questions on that subject. Meanwhile, happy shooting and see you next time.